What do you say? Make Cell perfect again. Oh my dear Cell. It's patch day. No!
Competitive gamers just do their bit, on screen, viewed on stream, with hundreds, thousands of people watching from all over the world. Now we're bringing you someone quite special, a man with a talent that gets the info as to why and how these players are so good.
Welcome to the Super Soul Shaker Podcast. Drex. Get ready for the next podcast.
Well, hello there everyone, how are you all doing? I have got the supposed king of the FGC interviews, BornFree. How are you, my man?
I'm good. My eyebrows went up then. I was like, king of what? King of interviews? I don't know about king of interviews. I think I'm the only person who can be bothered to do them. But thank you for that intro. It's made me feel good.
Well, the undisputed king. Yeah.
Undisputed, yeah. I like the sound of that. I think there are a few people knocking on the door right now, and they're doing a very good job. So.
But you are the one name that does kind of come out there. Like you're always there at the recent events interviewing the big names, the big players.
Yeah, I've sort of been around for a while as well, so a lot of the players, I try to mix it up, by the way. I try to mix it up between the big players and the smaller players, but you have to be, you probably know this as a content creator, you have to have a certain realistic outlook, which is, it sucks, but if you get the big names, it's great, but, you know, and it brings in the numbers, and that's what's great about it. But if you just do small names, you won't be able to bring in the numbers. So you have to get the mix right, because you want to support the smaller guys and have great conversations. And so it's sort of like you're constantly trying to figure out, you know, how big a name do I need from this tournament, and how small a name can I also get away with because this guy is really interesting, you know. And you want to sort of do your bit to support the FGC. Yeah, I try to mix it up, but I think I've made a name for myself in a way that's good, in that people want to talk to me, which is a bit unusual, I think. Like most people don't love interviews.
But you handle your interviews quite well with a certain integrity. Like the way I see your interviews is like it's almost like a backstage pass to like a big boxing event, like you're interviewing them just before their big bout.
Oh wow, I've never even thought of it that way. I love that.
Like it's more like the inside access kind of vibe. Yeah, your interviews are quite special.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's weird because, you know, when you're creating content, you just sort of get on with it. You sort of live in a bit of a vacuum. It wasn't, you know, I went to Evo this year and I didn't realize how many people kind of knew about my interviews and stuff, you know, watched them and what have you, until I saw them and they told me and they recognized me, and that's a bit weird because you do sort of live in this vacuum. And when I go to tournaments, most of the time I'm running around trying to schedule people, like on my own, and that's where all the hard work is. So none of it feels particularly glamorous. None of it feels like Hollywood access. But when I get into the interview, I really do enjoy it. And when I do get the chance to have, someone else take a bit of the weight off my shoulders, like if I have a good translator or interpreter who's on my wavelength, that's really helpful. If I have every now and then, occasionally I'll get lucky and get like someone who's gonna act as the cameraman and do sound and all that stuff, so I don't have to do that myself. Then I start to feel a little bit more like the production goes up, and then it starts to feel a little bit more like Access Hollywood or whatever. But yeah, I just grind really. Just have kept on doing it, and now what's interesting is a number of players sort of, not all, but there are some players who see a lot of my interviews and see me bizarrely as like a rite of passage, a sort of like, oh, when I get an interview with BornFree, that means I've made it.
like I'm truly verified.
Right, yeah. And it's a really odd thing because there are so many players I want to interview, and there are so many players who I respect, who I respect so much, but I don't have time to interview because I'm one man and I can only do so many interviews. And it's such a weird thing because you sometimes, like nowadays, I get players who come and ask me to be interviewed, right? And I'm like, well, I kind of can't because I've got, these interviews lined up or whatever. Every tournament I go to, I try to prioritize a certain group of people. I've always got a thought process behind that. And it's weird turning people down when I respect them hugely for what they do and their grind, and I know that they're about 1,000,000 times better than me at Street Fighter and all that stuff. And it's like, what do? I just ask some questions, and I don't know. It's an odd feeling. It's an odd position to be in, I guess.
But it's interesting because you just said, like you mentioned being a content creator. I guess in hindsight, that's you looking at it as a business. You just want to maximize the potential who you want to talk to at that event at what time.
Yeah, well, I do and I don't. So I'm pretty bad on the business side of things. So I don't really make any money. I've been trying to figure that out. Like that's something going forwards that I think all content creators and whatever you want to call them, artists, people who are doing something non-traditional, right? You're constantly trying to figure out, how do I monetize this, right? So I'm from a business standpoint, I'm not great, but from a marketing standpoint, I'm good because I used to work in marketing and advertising. So I sort of understand that, yeah, I'm calculated in the sense that I have to come back from this tournament with, let's say, a Tokido interview and a couple of other big names, and then I can throw in a couple of like lesser well-known names or up-and-comers or somebody who did something crazy like Canada Cup last year. Timo was this Canadian, is a Canadian who at the time was like 19 or 20, and he won. He beat like Justin Wong and Chris and all the big Marvel players to win MVCI and win one of the Infinity Stones. And I had no idea who he was. As far as I know, he'd never really done anything. But he did that, and I thought it was amazing. And I started talking to him and realized he was really good. Like, the interview is really, really good, in my opinion. So he's the kind of person where I'll just, okay, let me see if I can do this. If I've got time to do this, I'll do this. But unfortunately, it's really hard to get people to sit down and listen to those interviews. And my stuff is long form. It's a bit like a lot of my interviews are a bit like a podcast, I suppose. Apart from I'm not really doing a huge amount of talking.
I think your interviews do add something different. The fact that you catch them. I mean, interviewing them in real life, but interviewing them in a big tournament setting, like the thoughts and the feelings that they're going through. You really try to capture what they're going through at that moment, plus getting some general info.
Yeah, I know obviously my interviews, I know when I film them, they're not going to be out for a week or possibly 2 weeks, depending on the order that I do them in. I go to a lot of people don't really understand my process, right? Because I don't know, maybe they just don't think about it, or maybe they think or maybe they think I have access to players in the organised fashion that maybe League of Legends or, you know, the big esports do. But I mean, you must have been to tournaments, you know what it's like, right? Like our tournaments are like 1 million games, there's 1 million rounds that you have to go through, and there's these people who've flown from all over the world, and they, you know, they might have flown from Japan, they might have had 16 hours on the plane, they might be jet lagged, they might want to spend most of their time sleeping at the tournament. When they're not sleeping, they might want to be warming up, practicing, doing casuals, whatever. When they're not doing that, they're actually competing. When they're not doing that, they're eating. When they're, you know, so a tournament environment is extraordinary in the sense that it's just a few days, and all of these guys are there to win the tournament. You know, they've got stuff to do, and on top of that, they have other obligations and people to see and socialize and all sorts of stuff. So I usually go there, you know, with my top 10, like I'm going to get these 10 players, you know, and it used to be that I couldn't contact them beforehand, I just have to try and flag it. Nowadays I've got better contacts and I can try and contact them beforehand and everything, but it still, there's never, very rarely are there any guarantees that anyone's going to turn up at any specific time. Because most people turn up to the tournament and it's all very last minute and they don't even know when they're playing, you know?
Yeah.
So most of the real hard work is exactly that. Is like, how the hell am I going to get this player to sit down, especially for my long form interviews, for an hour or whatever it is, and talk to me? You know, when am I going to be able to do that? And am I going to be able to walk away from this tournament with a good number? Because I like to walk away, if I can, with 10, which is actually kind of crazy.
That would be 2 weeks of worth, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's like one every day, right? So I'll usually go Monday to Friday, right? When I leave on the release schedule. And if I'm there for 3 days, I'll try to get 10 interviews. But I don't know. Like, I've been thinking a lot recently about quality and quantity, and a lot of people see my interviews as quality. But to me, they're also, it's, you know, I'm aiming for quantity as well. And the way that I go about that is that I have like like 5 pages of preset questions that I just kind of pick and choose from, you know?
Yep.
Whereas when I recently interviewed Tokido, we'd done so many interviews in the past, I really wanted to do something special with him. And so we sat down and we talked about things which were much more specific, you know, like I'd had an opportunity, because he's not my favorite player, so I'd had an opportunity to really dig in and think about, oh, what was he going through when he did this, when he did Kimono Michi with Daigo, and what happened at the end when he was crying, and, you know, how does he feel about it now, and, you know, like, just get into their mind space, but also get into moments, you know, like, I think that's important. I've been thinking about that a lot recently, is like, you know, what do I want to achieve? Do I want to go there, or, you know, what can I achieve at these tournaments? You know, sometimes I go with a list of 10 and I end up with 2 on my list of 10, and the other 8 are people that I pick up just, you know, on the spot because they're wandering around and they're free. So yeah, it's interesting at the moment. Like, maybe in a few years, it will be more organized. Certainly, I know the team UYU is a team that is hyper organized. So if you ask them for an interview and set up time, it will happen. But for the other guys, it's usually just the way it's always been, which is just trying to make it happen somehow.
Yep, eventually, eh?
Yeah.
So,
well, you know, Sundays aren't so bad, because Sundays what happens is everyone's out of top 8 unless they're in top 8,
and
right?
they're just chilling, right?
Yeah, so they're either chilling waiting for top 8, or because there's not many a lot of players don't like to put too much stress on themselves, pressure and stress before a top 8. Like, they'll do some practice against, you know, their opponent who they know they're going to hit first, but they also, a lot of them tend to find more success in sort of relaxing. So before top 8, Sunday is usually a good day. So you have players who either made top 8 or didn't make top 8, but they're free, unless they fly home early. And they're also not salty, because that's the other thing is when they get knocked out, they don't want to do an interview, and you don't want to do an interview with them because they're really, really salty.
Oh, especially if they've just got knocked out. Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, it means so much to them. You know, it means, you know, they're trying to make if you can imagine, they're trying to make a go of it. They're trying to make it as pro players. It's, you know, this is their lifestyle. This is the lifestyle they want. And there are so many players that are on sort of dancing around on the cusp of it, and occasionally make top 8, and then sometimes don't. When they don't, it hits them like a ton of bricks, you know? It's like another tournament that went by where they didn't make top 8. It's another tournament which affects their standings. Another tournament which affects their sponsorship opportunities, you know? And so, like, the salt is, it's major levels, you know? It's not just anger, it's disappointment and all sorts of emotions. So, yeah, you can't interview those guys. Like, it's just not going to happen. But by Sunday, they've had a good night's sleep, or they've done whatever they've done. You know, maybe they've gone out drinking, I don't know. But by Sunday, you can grab them. So Sunday is a good day for interviewers, usually.
Yeah. What made you get into this interviewing thing? Like, what caught your attention to it?
The reason I'm laughing is because it's a good question, and the answer is kind of weird. Not weird. Sorry, I use the term weird when I can't think of the right word. So a couple of things happened. One was I was at the time. I mean, I still am, but like at the time, I was hugely into, like, Eventhubs was like the place to go. Right. This was back in 2011, 2012 or something. And I would go to Eventhubs and I would sort of read the stories and stuff. And there was this one guy, I don't even remember his name, but he did a bunch of different stuff, but he would do video interviews, and I just felt like he wasn't really asking the questions that I wanted to hear the answers to, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to know, like, why are you good? That's basically at the heart of, like, all of my interviews is, why are you good and I'm not? You know? What is it that makes you so good? Like, what do you do? You know, do you work harder than me? Or are you just a natural talent? Like, I just want to know. And as it turns out, the answer is kind of different for each player, which is really interesting. But his interviews were a little bit more like 2 minutes of the camera being on and like, hey, look, I'm best mates with Yipes or whatever. And that's all I took away from it, was like, oh, you're in with the in crowd or something, you know? Like, there was nothing to it, no substance.
Yeah.
You know, potentially it might have been slightly entertaining, but it just had no substance. And I was like, I need substance. And then the second thing that happened, so I didn't really think about doing it myself too much until I broke up with my girlfriend. And I don't know, emotional pain is a huge motivator to actually go out and do the shit that you want to do.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was like, well, fuck this. I'm gonna go and interview players, and, you know, like, all of your fear is gone because you're just like reeling from this breakup. And so I'm just like, I'll go and talk to these players and I'll interview them, and if that, you know, and I'll just tell them you're being interviewed, you know. Sometimes you have to do that, by the way. You just have to tell them. And I interviewed like Dominion and Gutex, and that was my first set of interviews, and I don't know, they were just received well, and I plodded along and did lots of different content, and I still do lots of different content, but people know me for the interviews more than anything else, and I don't know why that is, but for some reason the interviews stand out, and people seem to enjoy them, so
yeah,
that's sort of how it started, and then it just sort of kept going, really.
Tell us about the team that you work with. So there's you. Who else helps you with creating this content?
Nobody.
It is just
so. Yeah. Yeah, it's just me. I don't have any money to pay anybody, and I'm not very good at. I was always brought up as. I think it's funny because my dad's in New York at the moment. I was talking to him about this because he's a very independent person, and I think I always grew up with this mentality of like, if I want to do something, I'll get it done and I'll do it myself, right? And I don't think I've ever been good at, unless I'm put in a place, like I used to work, run teams and all that sort of stuff at work, but I don't normally consider like how I'm going to get something done with a group of people. I tend to think this will be easier if I just go do it myself.
Yes.
I don't have to rely on anyone. Don't have to wait for a cameraman. The only I would say that interpreters have been immensely helpful to me. People
yes, the
who have been
translators.
the translators. They have been. There are a few now that I've worked with, and some of them are professionals basically. So like Kevin Burnout Fighter, who's from your parts actually, I think.
Yeah, Aussie boy.
Yeah, Aussie boy. He's incredibly professional in terms of, I think they prefer to be called interpreters because there's more to it than just translating directly.
Word for word, yeah, man.
Yeah, you got to sort of, because of the language barrier, you sort of have to interpret what people are saying, and so it's a pretty amazing thing that they do. So people like Burnout Fighter will give up his time just for the FGC in the same way that I do, but it's amazing when he does that. He makes himself available, and the same goes for there's a whole bunch. I could name loads, but the most consistent consistent and professional is Burnout Fighter, and then Disco Vigilante, who does the Japanese. He's actually living in Japan now, and those guys are amazing. Like they speak in the first person, so they say I, and they use the same inflection and enthusiasm as the people that have just given the answer, and they're incredible people. Burnout Fighter, for some reason, Koreans talk for longer than the Japanese, and I don't know why, but they just do. And he somehow manages to remember absolutely everything they've said. Like he's got like a photographic memory. So if there's anyone that does help me as when I feel like I'm part of the crew, it's those guys, because they'll help me interpret, they'll help set up the interviews, they'll be on my wavelength, and like that's great. But generally speaking, no, I don't have a crew, but I think the intention for me going forwards is to see if I can work with more people. If I can find. I recently had a cameraman, and he did camera and sound at Defend the North, and it was brilliant because I got to use lavalier mics. I didn't have to worry about production. I got to relax. I got to have a back and forth with the players. I got to really poke away at certain things, in a way that you can't when you only have one mic, because it's sort of a back and forth exchange. It's sort of like it's like Street Fighter. It's like you have to wait for your turn, Whereas with lavaliers, you're just flowing, and so I want to do more of that in the future. And I just teamed up with UYU as like on their stream team, and so as an organisation, I'm hoping, I don't know yet, but if I have strong proposals for them, then I think it's possible I might be able to do things in a more team-like fashion, which would be awesome.
Well, since you mentioned UYU, I'm happy you mentioned that. Would you consider doing other FGC content, like for example, vlogging, or is there any other FGC content makers you'd like to work with?
For the first question, yeah, I will do everything. And I've done everything in a way, but I will do everything. I'm definitely going to get more into streaming, that's for sure. Going to stream all sorts of things live. And I have some big ideas. It's just a case of, ideas are one thing, it's making it happen. I think that's the big thing. vlogging, you know, like IRL streaming possibly type vlogs, vlogging for YouTube. I don't know, it depends. If I had an editor, because I suck at that, but like if someone could edit that stuff, I would happily make content all day if I had someone who was editing. And so I'm definitely going to think about like how could I make that work. Is that, you know, because there's not a YouTube doesn't pay a lot to be honest, but like if I can get into a groove with somebody and they are like willing to grow with me, then, you know, maybe I can figure out some profit sharing or something like that. I don't know. Are there YouTubers I'd like to collab with? Yeah, loads of people. I mean, I often my collabs are sort of start off by just interviewing them because, you know, they kind of deserve it for a lot of the work that they do. Mm-hmm. But also, you know, I'd love to do me and Ernesto.
Ernesto Lopez, yeah.
Yeah. We talked for a while about trying to find a skit or something to do together, because I've done skits in the past, and so I think you know, once one of us actually, you know, has that light bulb moment for a skit involving the two of us that makes sense, then I think that's something that we'll do. I think I'll have to do it before he becomes too big, because he's just like he's found his thing, and he's growing tremendously well.
Quite big actually, yeah.
Yeah, huge. He's doing a wonderful job, and yeah, really, really good. So me and him will probably have to collab before he's like a new max $1 million or whatever.
Oh.
I think Ernesto is going to eventually eclipse, you know, the FGC, because I feel like that kind of drama, he's already been doing. I've already seen him do videos which are, you know, way outside, that are outside of the FGC. You know, like I've seen him do a video about Ninja. You know, so I see him going in that direction. Like I see him always having that FGC core, but kind of growing. But yeah, there's him. There's, you know, Gerald, Core Gaming. I love. Yeah, and in a way, we sort of have collaborated, but in a bizarre way, like in our own sort of way. Like I've interviewed him, right? So that was at Evo like last year, which was cool. But he was putting analysis videos together, and I remember when Bonchan, my most famous interview is probably when Bonchan was basically saying that the person who invented, this is in season 1 maybe, basically said that the person who invented Balrog was retarded, right? But it was a un-PC translation, but that's not really the point. The point is that interview in Japanese made it to the Japanese FGC and made it to Capcom Japan. And so, you know, it wasn't like they were hearing the translation. They heard what was being said, the real deal, which was something more along the lines of the person who invented Balrog has, you know, must have something wrong with it, you know, that kind of thing. But it was kind of like one of his best friends who was translating. Anyway, I had a bunch of interviews where I'd asked players about the game, because, you know, it's a very contentious issue, like Street Fighter and the way it was released and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, man.
And and I didn't work for anybody. I didn't have any sponsors or anything like that. So I could ask the questions that nobody else could ask, you know? I could say, what are your thoughts on this game? How do you feel? And it was at a time that the players were more willing to open up about it. And so what happened was, I had said to Gerald, like, if you want to use my interviews, go ahead. And it just turned out that he was working on a video, which is now his most popular video of all time, which has lots and lots and lots of clips from my interviews in it. So, in a way, we collaborated.
Okay.
You know, like I did my bit, went off and did my bit, and then like he sort of put it all together into something which he put it all together into, like, you know, gave it a narrative, you know. And that video was seen all over the world. I think it was called "The Consequences of Reducing the Skill Gap," but it's like 1.5 million views or something insane like that. So yeah, there are, but for sure there is lots and lots of people out there that I that I want to collab with. It's just a question of when. It's just a question of what, you know.
So here's a basic question: do you consider yourself, because we're talking about this content, do you consider yourself? Would you call yourself a YouTuber?
I always call myself a YouTuber, because I get called all sorts of stuff. Like I get people who, you know, study journalism and want to talk to me about journalism, and I'm like, well, I mean, we can talk, and I can tell you what I think, but like, I don't consider myself a journalist. You know, I just make YouTube videos, and yeah, I guess, you know, it's a weird moniker because in a way it sounds very unprofessional to say that to people. You know, you meet them at you know, when people are networking at events and stuff, it's like, well, I'm the social media manager for Red Bull or whatever, you know, and I do this and I do that. And what do you do? Oh, well, I'm a YouTuber. So it sounds great, that's for sure. But I do consider myself a YouTuber because actually, I probably consider myself a content creator nowadays. It sounds a bit more pretentious, but like, you know, I'll meme it up on Twitter, or I'll put stuff out there just to test the waters to find out what's going on, or I'll put information out there on Twitter. I don't love Instagram, but I will use YouTube, and now I'm definitely, you know, getting into streaming. So I think of myself as a content creator, but it could be anything. I love skits, so that is by far my favorite thing to do, is make skits. And bizarrely, my most liked thing. Like, when I throw a skit out, that will get like 1,000 likes, and it blows my mind. You know, how many people will decide that because they're enjoying it, they're going to hit the like button, you know?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff that I've done, and a lot of other stuff that I'm willing to do. So, yeah, I try not to box myself in too much. I definitely don't think of myself as just an interviewer, you know?
Yeah. Was there a particular interview you've done that you've regretted, or that you've wished you had approached differently?
Yeah, I interviewed Moke, and I tried. It was an experiment. I failed forwards, I think. You know, like, I learnt from it. A lot of people watched the interview and were fine with it. They enjoyed it, but for me, it wasn't my best. And I knew it, and then some douchebag came on and decided to comment, you know, use it as an example of why he hated me. YouTube, you know, it's my favorite thing is YouTube comments.
Yeah, man.
No, on the whole, people are really awesome because they see the work I put in. But every now and then, somebody, if they see a slight vulnerability, they're ready there to sort of twist the knife, you know. But Moke the problem with it was that he plays two games, right? So he plays Dragon Ball and he plays Street Fighter. And I was covering Dragon Ball and Street Fighter, and I was like, well, let me try and do both games. And I did it in the wrong way. I've since found out a better way of doing it, which I did with Momochi and a few other players who play both games. But I would go question by question, and the flow would get ruined because I would go, okay, here's a question for Street Fighter, and they would finish the question, you know, answering the question, and I would say, and now the same question for Dragon Ball. You know, because they're not, a lot of the questions aren't too dissimilar, you know, it's like, why'd you pick your team? You know, why'd you pick your team? Why'd you pick your character? You know, like, I'm always interested in that stuff. And, well, what do you think about the game? What do you want, you know, there are some really basic questions that open up some really interesting answers, you know, that they can be, my questions can be very similar interview to interview, but the answers can be, you know, amazingly different. That's what's important, is the answers, I think. So I felt like I really messed up the interview in terms of the flow. It didn't feel like it was flowing, and the other thing was Moke didn't watch Dragon Ball the anime, which, you know, at the time I had only interviewed people who'd watched the anime.
So the references and all that stuff. Yeah,
so I kind of got into a certain swing for Dragon Ball interviews, and it was really weird because for me it was the first time I was like, oh crap, I I have to approach the Dragon Ball interviews in a completely different way, because all the fun in the initial Dragon Ball interviews was, yeah, here's the game and here's all the game stuff, but when we talked about like your love for the anime, there was something really amazing about that, and still is. Like one of the Kazunoko just won. Kazunoko just won. He won in Taiwan, right?
Mm.
And he also won a Dragon Ball.
A Dragon Ball.
The first Dragon Ball, the Dragon Ball Tour CEO, I think it was. So Kazunoko is this really interesting chap. But what was interesting is he started winning when he picked up Yamcha on his team, right? After the balance patch, which kind of made Vegeta's assist not so good, whatever. And if you go back to my original interview with him, way back when the Japanese first came to America at final round to play Dragon Ball, when we talk about the fun side of Dragon Ball, I asked him, what's your favourite character? And he said Yamcha. And he wasn't playing Yamcha at the time. So, I find that stuff fascinating, because like if you have a connection to a character, it means everything. Look at Bonchan and Sagat right now. Like, it's insane. Like, for him to pick Sagat against in real competition recently after only 2 weeks against Tokido, who's, arguably, the best player in the world, or most consistent.
Yeah. Yeah,
right? So, Tokido is Akuma. Bonchan is Sagat. Daigo was Ryu and then got super depressed because Ryu was, wasn't strong, and then moved on to Guile, and now he's happier. And he used to play at Guile back in the day as well. But a lot of players have strong emotional connections to characters, and when they're not able to play those characters, quite often for them there's something missing. And then when the character turns up, they make it work. There's an added incentive, a bonus. And you would think that this wouldn't be the case for professional players, right? You'd think, nah, they're all business, like, no chance. But it's so true. And I just go back to that interview. He wasn't playing Yamcha at the time, because Yamcha, I don't think he felt was strong or viable. And then after the update, he felt Yamcha was viable, and he threw Yamcha. He's still like one of the few players who plays Yamcha, right?
Yeah.
And he threw Yamcha into his team, and it's just such an amazing thing to see. So anyway, sorry, that was a long story about like emotional connection to characters.
No, it was good. It was good. It is something that most professional players don't consider. But you're right. There's something really unique. Like as you said, Bonchan and Sagat. It was like he is the king for a reason. Both of them hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, he was waiting for Sagat so long. He was really worried about how the character was going to turn out, but the character turned out really well, and he basically said within like 1 day, it was just pure fun. Like playing his character was just pure fun. He was loving it, and to see him like already trying to use that character in competition, because he had initially said that he was going to play it safe. He was going to play Nash or whatever, and just try and qualify for Capcom Cup. But to see him like break out his character against Tokido was like so hype, and I think from now on, he's just going to keep plugging away at the character, and it, hopefully it will really work out for him, because it's exciting to see when you see somebody with their own character. It's just great. But yeah, circling back, but I felt like the Moke interview wasn't that great, and I've had interviews in the past where you get a bit like people who are a bit like yes no, and it's awful, because you might just have 10 questions, and if it's a yes, if they're like yes no, you're done in like 2 minutes, and you're like this is not going to look good for anyone. It's not going to look good for the player. It's not going to look good for me, and it's not going to look good for the FGC. So I have actually in the past taken interviews, not many, but I've taken interviews and gone, nah, I'm not going to run that.
It is a skill, I guess, you require over time. You know, it's like boiling water in a kettle. You know, you get used to warming your guests up a little bit, and then they start to actually give like good stories.
There's that, and then there's also they're just young. A lot of them are really young. You know, they're and different personalities. Like some of them, they just want to play. And like, you know, I'm, you know, in order to get my interviews, I have to be quite pushy. So sometimes I'll end up just getting these, you know, kids, and I call them kids, but like, you know, early 20s or whatever, and like we'll sit down, and it's like they are a little inexperienced with it. Being interviewed is really hard, you know. You kind of have to be in the right mood. You kind of have to, your brain has to be firing in that way, and also sometimes you have to be the right kind of personality type. And some people are just brilliant at it, and others it's tougher, you know. And it's kind of like why I will jump on podcasts. One of the reasons I will jump on podcasts with people like you is to get a little bit more of that experience of not being the guy who has to lead the conversation, you know. Yeah. And seeing what it's like on the other side.
It is different. I do think naturally having a camera on you, you instantly become vulnerable. Every action, everything you react to, it's caught on camera. And as you said, you know, you've got people watching on YouTube. They're going to comment, they're going to analyze, they're going to judge.
Yeah, it's true. Well, but so what I do with the players actually nowadays, you know, you're right. It has, to your point about, you know, getting better as you go along. One of the things that I like to tell them is, look, it's being recorded, it's not live. So if you fuck up, or if I fuck up, I can edit it out, and I will. I'm not a gotcha guy, you know? I'm not like, oh shit, I got him to say this. Let me just run with that, you know? I'm more along the lines of, you know, very wary, especially if somebody says something contentious. I'll often ask them afterwards, are you sure you want me to keep that in? When Bonchan went off on Capcom, I said to him, are you sure about this? And he just looked at me and went, yeah, absolutely. Because he was, at the time, this is why I love Bonchan, right? At the time, he knew that potentially there would be consequences for him as a sponsored player to speak out against Capcom and do it in a way that really got noticed.
Yes.
But he doesn't regret it, you know? Like, he'll say nowadays, like, I think nowadays he feels like he's done his part, and there's really no point in him continuing to, you know, go on any crazy rants or anything like that. But he did something important, I think. You know, he got Capcom Japan's attention, and they didn't like it. They did not like it at all, and that, you know, that's not good news for a pro player when there are invitationals going on and stuff like that, you know. But he felt like at the time it was important to stand up and say the things that he said, you know. And the rest of, I've heard other players have come up to me and said, we loved that interview. He spoke for us, kind of thing. So it is great when stuff like that happens. But yeah, in order to keep people at ease, I tend to tell them it's just recorded. Don't worry. If you mess up, you can re-record it. If you want to edit something, if you want me to edit something out, I can. You know, my goal is not to uncover some bizarre thing about somebody, you know.
Yes.
Or some bizarre drama. My goal has always been to help players in the FGC be understood better as human beings, and sort of highlight them, and but also, you know, more selfishly, I want to know how to get better, you know. And when I say selfishly, I mean for everybody watching. Like, we want to know, like, how much work do you really put in, you know?
Yeah.
When I interviewed Fenrich, he said he does 8 to 9 hours every single day of combo practice for Dragon Ball.
That's insane.
Right? That was our reaction too. 8 to 9 hours a day of combo practice. Dragon Ball is a game where, you know, I'm simplifying it, and I'm not a high level player, but there's the neutral and getting that first hit, and then there's converting the hit right into as much damage as you possibly can. And those combos, they call them routes, you know, or routes in America, I guess. Those combos or routes, you know, which include resets and assists and, you know, whatever. Those are the things which you practice, right? And for some players, like let's say Sonic Fox or maybe Super Noon, right? These guys are actually pretty good at that stuff. Like they can watch things and they can sort of almost do them in real time. But other players, like the Kill Sage, who's like Sonic Fox's best friend, right? Is the opposite. Like the Kill Sage and Fenrich, who happens to be a BlazBlue god. These guys are working 8 to 9 hours a day doing combo practice. You know, the end result is the same, right? Like the end result is Fenrich ends up 3rd at Evo, you know, which is extraordinary. You know, Sonic wins Evo, you know, like, but they're just so different. You know, their approaches, it's phenomenal. And that is what I always wanted to understand, was I wanted to understand these people who are so good and are so much better than me. And I wanted to know, how hard do you work? And, you know, the funny thing is, the answer is, it really varies. And it's you know, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses and work on completely different things. And, you know, that in a way that shouldn't be, I guess that shouldn't be surprising, but some of it does surprise me. I think Sonic Fox is somebody who surprises me, because I just think, wow, you know, like how does he looks at the game so differently, you know, picks up games so quickly. But Fenrich, that doesn't surprise me. You know, it surprises me how much work he does, because I don't know if I could work that hard without getting bored. I actually said in the interview, that sounds really boring. You know, but he loves it. He loves doing lots of different types of combos and mastering them and all that sort of stuff. But that makes sense to me. The practice, like having to practice 8 to 9 hours a day, makes sense to me. Some of the other guys don't make any sense to me at all, but that's kind of why I do the interviews.
Yeah, I get you. Well, because of all these interviews and all these players you've met, can you give us the name of 3 players that you consider heroes, people that you look up to?
Yeah, Tokido is number 1, absolutely. For me, anyway, personally. You know, he's just constantly setting a good example for people. He's constantly checking himself. I'm pretty sure when he was younger, he was a cocky little bugger, you know? Yeah. And they all were. That's sort of how they come in. You know, you see some of the younger kids now, they're quite cocky. A lot of people misunderstand some of the younger players. Oh god, my brain's broken right now. The Dominican Republican players, you know, like they tend to get a little bit misunderstood, because they're quite cocky. Yeah. But a lot of that has to do with, you know, when I've investigated it, a lot of it has to do with, like, look, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to be scared of Daigo? Do you want me to be scared of Tokido? Or do you want me to figure out a way of mentally tricking myself into believing that I can beat them? Because that's the only way I'm going to beat them, basically. Which makes sense. So it's like, I'm going to be a cocky sod because I'm going to tell myself I can beat Tokido and Tokido is nothing to me. Because that's the only way I'm going to be able to compete with him. I can't walk into the ring, you know, the metaphorical ring, or the real ring at CEO, and believe that he is a god. You know, that's just not how it's going to work. But yeah, I mean, Tokido, you know, just because of how much work he puts in, just because of how much research he does, just because of how innovative he is, just because he's not scared to do things that people will laugh at, and then once he kills everybody and is Evo champion, people are copying, you know, whether it be meditation or whatever, you know. So Tokido is one of them for sure, and then it becomes hard. It's very hard because there's so many, you know, like there's so many heroes in America, whether it be players or commentators, you know, leaders within the community, you know, there's so many TOs and commentators. It's almost like it's hard to name them all without leaving somebody out, you know. But you know, everyone knows Tokido is my number one.
I think we appreciate the hard work, as you said, but it's the grit, you know, that he really earned his spot. Yeah,
and he also made a big transformation in his life. There's video footage. It's funny because I feel like half the time I feel like I'm the only one who knows this. I know I'm not the only one who knows this. I know there's all these people who grew up in the FGC who know it, but there's a lot of people who just don't. And there was a time when Tokido was referred to as Dirty Tokido, right?
Yeah.
Because he basically would play a million different games, and he would find, and this is an art form in itself, he would find the cheapest character and the cheapest tactic or strategy, and he would just do that. And if you didn't have an answer for it, he'd just kill you, and that was it. And there was no flash or, you know, kind of like crazy skill or anything like that. He would just rinse and repeat, you know, like he would pick, in a lot of the games, you know, they used to have, like, they wouldn't get patches and they'd have broken characters and stuff like that, so he used to do that. And then one day I guess he got beaten in definitely got beaten in a first 10 by Momochi in Topanga, and he also Daigo beat, I think he was inspired by Daigo. It's in my interview, but basically those guys had much stronger fundamentals and a sort of outlook and methodology, and you know, they were strong players. And if you had a gimmick, if it went more than like first to two, they would fuck you up. You know, like they would be like, all right, figured it out what your gimmick is, you're done. And when Tokido realized that, he realized that he might not have a long shelf life in fighting games, because he just felt like it was better to become that you know, a strong, he calls it like a good player, a strong player. So he became more and more fundamentally sound and stronger. He took on Akuma, and he really innovated with Akuma in Street Fighter 4. And then, I don't know if you remember this, but like in Street Fighter 4, I think it was Ultra, they changed a bunch of stuff, right? But one of the things they did was they changed the way that you got up, right? Sorry, wake up.
Oh, yeah.
They gave you wake up options, basically, so that the vortex that Akuma used to have disappeared. So Akuma was all about vortex, right? And that's how Tokido used to play. The character was all about vortex. And then when the vortex went missing, it was like he just learnt fundamental with this character that has no health, you know, but a lot of attacking options. But he just blew my mind at that point. And I think that's when I really started to tune into Tokido. And then when 5 came out, it was just wild watching him innovate with like Ryu, and then when Akuma came along, like there's no one else who does what he does with Akuma, you know?
No.
But everyone will say on a tier list, they'll say, well, Akuma's number one, right? Because I had this conversation with Kami, but basically all tier lists these days are based on the players. Because if the players don't put the work in, the character won't be noticed, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, he's I love Tokido. I think he's brilliant.
So with Tokido having Akuma as his, I guess, character or avatar, are you familiar with the movie Ready Player One?
I heard of it. I've not watched it.
Oh, okay.
I've been told that I should, because apparently a lot of it is nostalgia based.
Yeah, a lot of game references. Basically, you put on like a VR headset type thing, and you're in a digital world, and you are a character or an avatar. So, if there was a real life Oasis and you could go into a digital world, what character or avatar would you want to be?
Oh, blimey.
Obviously, if you're Tokido, you're going to go Akuma, but what would your pick be?
Any video game?
Could be any character or avatar. You wouldn't even have to be a person. It could be a bird.
I mean, now I'm just starting to think like a dude. So like any environment where like I'm the king, and you know, I don't know. Like you know what I always used to like playing was The Witcher 3, because he would kind of go around and he'd fight things and then he'd get laid and like
on horseback.
Yeah, on horseback, and all the women loved him. And, you know, he had like this cool daughter who was, you know, really, you know, did amazing things, and like I don't know, I love that game. Like there was a element to his lifestyle, you know, which felt kind of cool. Like, you know, he wasn't actually human. I was about to say he's like a man's man, like, but he wasn't actually. I mean, I guess witches aren't actually human, but I don't know. He did a lot of cool shit, but I don't know. It's hard. Like putting yourself into a video game is very different from. You know, it's interesting because you can also compare it to real life, and you go because there are so many video games out there that are just based on real life. You know, virtual reality is going to be very much based on real life. You know, I think people are going to want to be in situations where they can sort of live their perfect life. You know, I think virtual reality is a really interesting one, because I don't think we're that far away from situations where people will spend most of their time in the virtual world. As opposed to the real world. It's going to be like the Matrix, you know? And in that world, what are they going to want? Like, as a man, you're probably going to want to be important. You're probably going to want to be dominant, you know? You're probably going to want to, like I said, have all the women swooning, you know? And so I think it's sort of like, I don't know, like, I could give you a wacky answer, but I feel like if it would always come back to something very primal, you know?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
But we'd lock you in for Geralt or Geralt, however you say his name.
Yeah, like Geralt. Yeah, Geralt or Geralt. Geralt, I think I call him. I think maybe like him. I think.
Okay.
Interesting lifestyle.
With the horse as well.
With the horse and all the gambling that he does, you know, he plays that card game. I can't remember what I love that card game. I just really like that game. So, like, you know, and I think he's a cool character who can, you know, defend himself and has all these weapons, and you know, is a leader of men. But he doesn't want to be a leader of men. He just kind of wants to do things on his own. He's a bit of a loner in a way. You know, doesn't particularly. In fact, I don't even think he particularly likes people. So yeah, maybe him.
Okay. Well, thank you for the.
What about you?
Me? Oh God. I would probably. I hate to say it, but Lee from Tekken, or someone from Dragon Ball Z. Maybe Goku or his father Bardock. Yeah.
Goku's interesting. He's because he inspired a generation of kids. Like, I didn't really understand how much he inspired people. I've only just recently started getting into anime properly, you know. I've seen all the like classics and stuff, movies and things like that, but I've started to delve a little deeper. And when Dragon Ball the game came out, I made a decision. I could either play the game all day, or I could watch as much Dragon Ball as I possibly could, because I'd never seen it before. And I figured my interviews would be more interesting if I kept abreast of the game and understood it, but also knew the anime. And I made the right decision, right?
Yeah.
But it was interesting watching the anime, because the anime is, you know, it's all about this idea of never giving up, you know, that failing is okay, that in order to achieve something, you have to work for it, you know. And even then, sometimes you won't achieve it. You just got to you'll fail, and you got to keep trying. And that's a lot of that is shown in anime, right? It's like, just got to keep working at it, got to keep reaching the next power level, you know. And it's amazing how many of my friends who did watch Dragon Ball actually have a very positive outlook on life, and a lot of them attribute it to watching stuff like Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that you would be Goku, because a lot of people who haven't seen Dragon Ball wouldn't understand.
Yeah,
you know?
it's like characters like him and, you know, like Ryu constantly training and traveling. I think it's the message they portray. It's, you know, you can always be a better version of yourself if you just look beyond and prepare and, you know, never content with where you are at the present moment.
Yeah, and always looking for the next challenge, basically. Like, you know, there's, I think a lot of, oh god, I don't want to get too philosophical, but I think the, you know, there's a couple of sayings out there, right? One of them is that life is the journey, you know, it's not the destination. And I think we're all, this shouldn't be new news to anybody, but I think we tend to think of things as the destination, like, when this happens, I'll be happy. When I reach this level, I'll be happy. I'll be happy. But Ryu and Goku just want to keep going. You know, like, they just want to keep going because that's what's enjoyable to them. They always want someone to be better than them. So you know, they don't want to be they sort of want to be the best, but they sort of don't. You know, they sort of always want someone to be out there that can challenge them, and that seems to be the ethos. I don't know if ethos is the right word. Maybe philosophy behind things like Street Fighter and things like Dragon Ball. You know, Sagat is the same. You know, Akuma is the same. Like, these characters are all like, you know, please give me a challenge. I want the challenge is the important part. The struggle is the important part, as opposed to being king of the castle, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the info, BornFree. We will come back very shortly, guys. Don't go away.
Kia ora. This is Woolly Wolves, and you're listening to the Salt Shaker Podcast.
Well, hello there and welcome back. We have got BornFree with us. So if I may ask you, dude, what do you do as a job? What work have you got lined up?
So let me tell you the story, basically. So my career was in advertising, right? And they brought me to America, and eventually they got me a green card, and I was pretty good at what I did. I mean, I must have been, because I just kept getting promoted, and then I got to the level of like this level called group account director. So I was running these big accounts for North America, and those huge brands, everyday brands that you've heard of. big Procter and Gamble brands, and yeah, it was interesting. Like, I mean, it was, you know, for someone from the outside looking in, it was interesting, but there was something missing for me, and it was passion. Like, it just seemed to be missing. And bizarrely, whenever I was like hanging out with people, getting drinks or whatever, you know, there's always that dumb thing that you bring up, and I would bring up Street Fighter. And I don't know why. I have no idea why. But I'd be like boring the hell out of these people about Street Fighter who really didn't care. But they did care because I was so passionate about it. And that was the first time I'd heard people really say the word passion in association with things I was talking about. You know, it started to resonate, like this word, passion, passion, passion. And I was like, what are you talking about passion? Like, you know, there's life and you just kind of get on with it, and that's what it is. But they kept talking about it, and it made me reconsider a few things, and I wasn't feeling great. Like, I was feeling like, yeah, there was a lot of money, I guess, but I wasn't in the right frame of mind. You know, I was pretty depressed. I was like the guy at the beginning of Fight Club, if you've ever seen that movie.
Oh, dude. Really?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen the beginning of the movie, right? Yeah. You know how well they do that, like how well they visualize that sort of horrible kind of like day-to-day grind.
It's so terrible, man.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's dark and it's dreary, and it's like he goes home and he gets the takeout and he watches the TV and he's alone and he does it, but you know, it's a good job and it's good money, and he's kind of doing everything that he thinks he's supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that was me, in a way. There were things about my job that I enjoyed, don't get me wrong, it's advertising, it's kind of fun, it's full of interesting people, creative people, you know, it's very vibrant in that context, but I was in a bit of a rut. So, anyway, you know, to answer your question, I don't currently have like one career going, you know, I'm just surviving. And the reason I'm doing that is because I just am happier doing that right now. When I was in my career, you know, it was cool, like you got your own MacBook and you got your own phone and you got all this, you got amazing health insurance, and you know, you got paid really well, and you would get this great apartment, you know, or whatever, and all that stuff. But none of it really, ultimately the work absolutely owned you. You were always behind, you always had a million and your mind was constantly on that, and it wasn't open, and it certainly didn't, for me, I didn't have a creative outlet. And so one day I just said, alright, bye, and I just left, and I had some money saved, and you know, I've just been trying to figure stuff out. I've been trying to figure out how to be a happier person. I've been, you know, lots of stuff in trying various things, you know, which the FGC doesn't necessarily see. But one of those things is the FGC, and one of those things is creating content. And as I've gone along, I've become a little bit more well known and a little bit more successful at it. And occasionally I've been given jobs, you know, paid hosting jobs, and you know, I make a little tiny bit of money from YouTube, and I make a little tiny bit of money from Patreon. And when I start streaming, I'll probably make a little bit of tiny money from that. And it's like, because the big question is like, well, can I add all these little things together, and sort of, can that be my life, you know?
Yes.
Because I quite like it. I quite enjoy it. I feel real fulfillment in the things that I'm doing in a way that I never did before. And I'm nowhere near as, you know, for lack of a better word, rich, or I have nowhere near as much money as I had back then. But damn, do I feel better as a human being.
Yeah. Screw the money, more for the happiness, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a point where they scientifically, I think they've shown that there's a certain amount of money that you need. Like, you need to be able to keep the bill collectors at bay. When they say, like, happiness can't buy you, or money can't buy you happiness, right? It can buy you options, but certainly they say that once the bill collectors are kept at bay, you have enough money to keep them away, then a lot of that stress goes away. And then your happiness is sort of, or your fulfillment is sort of within your own control in many ways. That's sort of like how I like to think about it. So I don't know, we'll see in the future. Like, I'm just going to keep living day by day at the moment until it gets to a point where I'm like, either, oh, hey, things are sort of happening and I can continue to be a content creator and that can be my thing. Or I go, well, that didn't work, but I learned a lot about what keeps me fulfilled. So let me go off and get X job, but let's make sure that I have, these things, these certain things still in my life, like a creative outlet or, some contribution to the FGC, no matter how small or whatever. So it's more of a transitionary period, to be honest, so I could never say, like, this is my job. Like, I'd love to be able to say YouTube is my job, but it definitely is. I definitely don't make enough money to be able to say that yet.
Is work what brought you to America? Because you're originally from the UK.
Yeah, well, so I was working in England. They fired a creative director. It kind of messed up the structure of everything. The work had to go through the American creative department, and they needed like a sort of a liaison, like somebody who would work, I guess, in America for the UK agency. And it was one of the few times in life where something kind of happened to me as opposed to I made it happen. Like, I'm not one of those people who things happen to, right? I'm just not.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of people who are like that, but things don't happen to me. I don't really trust in the universe that everything's going to be okay, like, because I've always had to go out and get it myself.
Tell us.
But
Yep.
sorry.
No, you go, man.
I was just going to say, that was the one time something happened and they went, we want you to go. And my head was spinning because I was like, you want me to go live in New York? Like, because I thought I was just going to stay in London forever, I hadn't really considered it. And then it happened and it was cool. And then when I got here, the temporary job turned into a permanent one because they liked me here. And so that's what happened, I stayed.
Whereabouts from London are you from?
I'm not from London. I'm from the south coast, from a little town called Worthing, which is near a bigger town called Brighton. Who now the Brighton football team is now back in the Premier League, which has taken my whole life for them to get back there. But that's another story. But I grew up there till I was like 18, and then I went to university in London. I studied geology, of all things. And then I decided to get into advertising, and just stayed in London. And I lived in a lot of different places in London. So I lived in North London, I lived in South London, towards the end I was in East London. Might not have lived in West London, I can't remember. It was a good 12 years of moving around and renting various apartments.
When you were going to move to America, within the 2 weeks of you going, were you feeling a bit nervous or apprehensive? Yeah,
scared to death. So, it was one of those moments where, sometimes I think this is sort of common knowledge, but people don't always act on it, but sometimes you got to do things, you do have to do things that scare you, right? To grow and to enjoy life. You have to be challenged, and a lot of the times we don't, because it's just easier not to, and it sucks, and anxiety sucks, and all that stuff, right? Mm. But this thing popped up, and I'm actually not very spontaneous. I may have become more spontaneous, I don't know, but I don't think of myself as a very spontaneous person. So if somebody says, we need you to go to New York and you're going next week, I need a moment. So I remember saying to them, that sounds cool. Can I give you an answer tomorrow? And they were like, yeah, sure. And I went for a walk. Like I left the building. You know, whenever I was stressed at work, you know, big advertising agency, whenever I was stressed, I used to leave the building and just go for a walk. And so I went for a walk, and my head was spinning, because I hadn't considered it. Like, I was just like, grew up in England, I lived in London. I didn't grow up in the type of family where, I ever really thought about the idea of traveling or living somewhere else. It just didn't occur to me.
Like for you, it was just the UK. You never thought you'd go to America.
No, I mean, not like you guys, like New Zealanders and Australians. I think it's sort of almost a rite of passage where you sort of go off and travel to Europe or whatever, right? Because we have Australia. I used to remember in England we'd have Australians coming through all the time. But no, I just used to think, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and it wasn't until they sent me to America when things my life felt different. Like I realized I was in a bit of a rut, and sometimes you don't recognize when you're in a rut, and years can go by, and you're just like, what just happened? And it's funny because I've been recognizing recently that, wow, I've been in New York for 12 years. Maybe with a green card, I can go anywhere in America. Maybe I should think about moving. And so that's the thing for me. That's sort of like one of my next things is like, well, why don't I just go to the West Coast, And there's so many cool things on the West Coast. Like that's where all like the video game culture is, That's where where anime is, where Japanese culture is, where there's just a lot of cool things out there, and I think about that a lot. Recently I've been thinking about like maybe I need to shift and move somewhere else, because with what I'm doing currently, I don't have to be in New York. In fact, it's kind of expensive being in New York, unless you're like working in the city, which I'm not. So, yeah.
So how did your family, the BornFree Ginger Clan, how have they been throughout this whole ordeal with you and the FGC?
They're fine. I mean, my dad has always been incredibly supportive. He always. My parents split up when I was like 6 years old, so he was. I would see him like once a month or whatever, but. And he's super smart. Like that side of the family is super, all engineers and scientists and stuff, right? And my mum's side of the family is more blue collar, so I was somewhere in between, right? That's kind of, I guess, why I kind of ended up in marketing or advertising, because you've got a little bit of that street smarts going on, as well as general logic and understanding and all that sort of stuff. But my father, who, like I think I said earlier, is actually in New York at the moment, which is wild because he hasn't, as far as I know, he's never visited. Although he claims he has, I don't know. But yeah, he's always been supportive, very supportive. I think I love talking to him about things. He's a real thinker, and nothing offends him. He doesn't believe that there is just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean that it's right. Like, he'll question everything,
Yeah.
I think we need more people like that. There's a lot of thought leaders now out in the world who are starting to get recognition for questioning things,
Yeah.
Because we tend to just go along with everything. We go, oh, this has been happening for years, so it must be right. But that's not true, in the 50s, they used to tell you that smoking was good for you. They'd have adverts with doctors telling you that smoking was good for you. So if you grew up in the 50s, that's what you believe,
Yeah.
Just because something is normal doesn't mean that it's right, basically. So my dad, in that context, is like, just do what you want to do. I don't know. He's hard to explain, but he's basically like he's a very successful. He was a successful person, and changed careers like 3 times. And I think he understands this idea of not always knowing necessarily the answer, but he respects looking for it.
Yeah. Not knowing isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, I mean, you can often know what makes you unhappy, and you can walk away from it, right? So that, I think, is a positive step. But a lot of people, it's drummed into them, well, you got to have a plan, you got to know what you're doing, and this and that and the other. And, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just got to get out of something before you can think differently, or before you can think straight, or before you can discover new things. And so he's been very supportive. My mother worries, that's what she does.
As all mums do.
Yeah, so I can't have great conversations with her about this stuff. One, she doesn't care, she's not interested. To her, it's all very boring. Like on a technical level, she just really doesn't care about video games or whatever I'm doing. But on another level, she's a little bit more like traditional. She's a bit more like she would be. Her personally, she would not feel as anxious if I was, in a traditional career, basically.
Yeah.
So it's sort of 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. But I nowadays I try to spend less time thinking about what they want and more about what I want, because you're only on the planet for so long, and you can only spend so long like impressing your parents.
Yeah.
I've been there and I've done that, and I didn't end up in a happy place. Like I got there and I was like, oh, look at me, I'm making more money than anybody, and I'm sure my parents are really proud of me, and they were. And then I was like, oh, I sort of reached that destination. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I've done that. What's next?
What's been the most difficult thing going from the UK to the US? Has it been the views on football? Has it been, I don't know, too many shops with buffalo wings, selling buffalo wings? What's been a tough stint with the transition?
Oh, loads of little. It's always like you kind of hit the nail on the head a little, because it's a lot of small things, which sometimes end up being big things. But I really miss the chocolate, because like chocolate here is garbage. It's really bad. Like Hershey's is just absolutely appalling. I have no idea. So Hershey's no go in America.
I
mean, I think it's disgusting, but like. I've since been told like chocolate is this thing, like chocolate. Apparently you love the chocolate you grow up with. But here's the deal: Americans aren't really into chocolate. Like confectionery isn't really a big deal to them. They have it, but like not like it is in England. Like, I have no idea what it's like in New Zealand because I've never been. But like in the UK, chocolate is a big deal. Cadbury is a big deal. Cadbury Dairy Milk chocolate is a big deal. It's huge. And when I go home, I eat as much as I possibly can because I'm a sugar addict, right? But here, the chocolate is bad, and I often look at it and I just think, Christ, there's a gap in the market here. Like, this is supposed to be a capitalist country, and yet, like, confectionery is not doing well. Like, because the stuff that does well here is, and they do it well, by the way, is like donuts, right? So, donuts, cakes and cheesecake, and then it's like ice cream. Ice cream is, like when you think of sweet things in America, you think of those things, but you don't really think of chocolate bars. No one goes, oh, let me go and get chocolate. Like they don't. They go, let me go and get a tub of Ben and Jerry's, because they do that well, but they definitely don't do chocolate well. So. But yeah, it's things like food. Like, even though everybody jokes about how English food is bad and rubbish and whatever, but I actually really do miss English food. Like, full English breakfast. Although you can sort of get those in New York, they're called full Irish breakfast. But they're not quite the same, you know. The Chinese, you know, even like takeout is, you know, Chinese food
Doesn't taste like Chinese food?
No, because so the, you know, like real Chinese food in China is very different to takeout Chinese food in America, right? And it's very different, and that is also very different from takeout Chinese food in the UK. And it's probably very different from takeout Chinese food in New Zealand. Because what happens is they just, you know, I guess they westernize it. I don't know what the term would be for New Zealand, but like they westernize it, right? So they add sugar or do whatever they need to do in order to make each of these meals appetizing. And in America, they have something called General Tso chicken or something. And you know, in the UK, like, you know, we do duck and pancakes, and it's gorgeous. It's one of my favorite meals, but it's different in the US. And so, like, Chinese is, I don't even like Chinese here, and I love it in England. So there's various, you know, different types of food, confectionery. Then of course my friends who I grew up with, who you have a special bond with and understanding, I miss them. Of course I miss them. You know, football, absolutely.
It's in your blood, mate. You have to miss that.
Yeah, I mean, you just miss the coverage, you know, and it sucks because a lot of the time you're kind of like not on the same wavelength as like your friends from the UK who are getting all the information all the time, you know, pundits and whatever, and, you know, their friends and whatever, and you're out here on your own watching it, and then you might get like some American pundit who doesn't quite read a situation right, and you don't quite understand what happened and what's going on, all that sort of stuff, and yeah, it's weird. And I'm not a huge fan of American sports other than like NFL, and I'm not even a huge fan of NFL, but a lot of their sports out here are they play a lot of games. So and let's take basketball for instance. That's actually the extreme. You know, it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. When I was a kid, I was kind of into it. I like Jordan and whatever. But like when you look at it, it's actually like a lot of games, right? And so like they'll do, you know, best of 7 or whatever between each team, and it makes you wonder like what's important. You know, you'll be at a game and you'll wonder, is this game important? Because it's best out of 7. You know, was that basket important? Because there's, you know, they're playing to 100 or whatever. You know, like not literally to 100, but like that's how many points they can score in a game. You know, whereas football, it's like, or NFL, they only play a very limited amount of games, and each game is really important. You know, and each goal is really important, or each touchdown is really important. And so that's why I gravitate more towards NFL, because like they only play like 16 games or 20 games if they win the whole thing. But yeah, sport, fishing I miss. There's a whole bunch of things I miss, but unfortunately there's a few things that, you know, that I don't miss, and there's also some things here that I prefer. So it's, you know, when you move countries, it's sort of, you don't really dwell too much on what you miss. You sort of just have to figure out for yourself if the move was right for you, and, you know, if the benefits outweigh the things that maybe you've lost, and, you know, other things. Yeah, like the weather affects me a lot, like my mood, you know.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of in the winter time. There's not a lot of sunshine in the UK. And I'm literally talking about sunshine. I'm not talking about how cold it is. I'm talking about sunshine. So it tends to go like dark for like 6 months of the year. You know, I'm exaggerating it a little bit, but I'm sort of, sometimes that does happen. I'm sort of not exaggerating. I remember going back there after a few years in America in the winter and being there and looking out the window and it being like so dark in the middle of the day because it was overcast and it was rainy or whatever. And I remember, I just thought, I don't remember it this way, but wow. But being in New York, it will be super cold, right? And it will snow, but there'll be this bright sunshine in the sky. And, you know, that has an effect on my mood, basically. And as I've gotten older, it's just gotten worse. So, like, the more it's like dark and overcast, the more I just want to curl up in a ball and just lay in bed and hibernate.
Yeah.
You know? I think they call it a seasonal affective disorder, right? So that's the technical term for it, but I definitely need the sun. So, like, if you're gonna talk about like what I miss, and not you specifically, I'm just talking the grand scheme of things. If you're gonna weigh up like, here's what I miss and here's what I like and all that sort of stuff, you also have to take into consideration, oh shit, this 6 months of the year turns me into like this guy who doesn't want to socialize, who just wants to be at home, who feels unhappy. And if the weather is affecting my mood, then I'd rather be in a place where the weather is actually going to help me as a human, you know, be happier and more fulfilled as a person, basically.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more important, right?
No, that's true.
Than that. So I do miss a lot of things, and but I get to experience them when I visit, which is great. I even went fishing last year, which was fantastic. Caught a lot of fish, it was fantastic. But at the same time, I'm very lucky. You know, I'm very lucky that I was able to come to the States. I'm very lucky that I have a green card. I'm very lucky that if I want, I can move out to somewhere hotter and sunnier. So yeah, I always think of myself as lucky, and I know a lot of people who really want to move to America but don't know how to make it. You know?
Yeah.
So I just think of myself as lucky. But god damn, I wish there was some Cadbury here.
Maybe one of your fans can send you some.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Or maybe another sponsorship project.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting because I'm going to bore you a little bit here, but
Oh, that's so good.
Cadbury, I'm kind of obsessed with it. But Cadbury, there is Cadbury here. The name and the look and the tone and the style. But it's owned by Hershey's. So at some point,
somewhere there's been a bit of cross-contamination, you think?
Well, they bought the rights to the name, and they sell these Cadbury chocolate bars, and I'm just, you know, I'm personally hurt by it. Like, I'm horrified, because they taste fucking disgusting. And what's sad is all of the American people that I know think that that's what Cadbury tastes like.
And you're like, no, I know the true taste.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's true of, like, I mean, the best way to put it is to think of something from New Zealand, you know, that tastes right in New Zealand, but, you know, they try to replicate it somewhere else. And actually, they didn't even try to replicate it, they just call it something. And then everybody thinks it's disgusting, right? When actually they haven't tasted the real Cadbury. So it's funny, it actually gets me really mad.
Yeah, I can tell. I'm surprised that you even swore.
Oh, really? No, I swear all the time.
No worries. So, tell us about a hidden talent of yours. Do you know how to play the saxophone?
No, I wish I did, because there's a connection between musicians and good fighting game players. Because I can't remember who brought this up. I think it was James Chen a long time ago. But I often ask people if they're playing musical instruments when I'm interviewing them, because the practice is the same for doing combos. So, you know, repetition, timing, and all that stuff is very similar. So, and a lot of great people who do combos, Desk, for instance, right, from the UK, or Sonic Fox, right? These people are actually accomplished musicians. I mean, I don't know that much about Desk, because I'm not really sure who knows that much about Desk, but I think he actually plays the guitar as well. And Sonic Fox plays like the freaking violin and piano, and there's a whole bunch of people who play instruments, who are amazing at fighting games. But secret talents. See, I think I'm good at fishing. I actually think I'm good at fishing because when we went back to England, I caught a bunch of fish, and he'll never hear this. He'll get angry. But one of my best mates, basically, we went fishing together, and he didn't catch any. I think he caught one fish, and he blamed it on like where we were positioned on the lake. Like, kind of reminds me of fighting games, really. Like he didn't pick a top tier position.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just angry because he wants. There's a part of him, I think, that because we haven't fished together for years, I think there's a part of him that wants to show me how good he is at fishing, right? I don't doubt that for a second, but I tend to think of myself as a good fisherman, and what it comes down to, because a lot of people think of fishing as luck, right? But you can increase. There is luck in fishing, but there's a lot of observation, right? There's a lot of thinking ahead. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot that goes into it, and also there's like. What I pride myself on with fishing is making sure that every detail is as good as it can be. So that when that opportunity comes, that fish is going to get hooked, right? And the line is not going to break, and it's going to be played, they call it playing, I don't know if you fish or not, but they call it playing the fish, right? Which is the fight between you and the fish. And in the UK it's catch and release, actually. It's all pretty humane. It's fairly humane, apart from the dragging this fish in by its mouth. We use barbless hooks, and we put them on these soft mats, and when we're unhooking them, we take a quick photo and we put them back in the water, and off they go. But they're big old fish that they grow to a good size, and I caught some 20-pound plus fish, 25-pound fish or something. And yeah, I pride myself. I've always prided myself in being good at fishing. That I think that's my secret, one of my secret talents. And then I guess my other secret talent, which is not so secret, must have something to do with interviewing. And I'm not sure what it is. It's either empathy or making people feel at ease or something. I'm not quite sure what it is, and I don't think about it too much. But every now and then I go, well, why isn't everyone just doing what I'm doing? Like, maybe because there's no money in it and I'm an idiot.
No,
but
there is a growth though. Like, not only is the FGC growing player-wise, but a lot of people that are creating the content. As you said, there's Ernesto Lopez, there's yourself. I think there's an Australian good called Zareen that does a few interviews as well. Maybe it's the fact that you've got some English blood in you as well. Like, you seem more, I don't know, maybe not more compassionate, but you're just easier to talk, easier to commune with.
Maybe. I used to listen to people a lot when I worked in advertising. Like, I used to joke that my job was like therapy, because I was like the guy, I was the boss, sort of, and everybody would come to me with their problems, run, bitch and moan and all that sort of stuff, and eventually I'd just listen. My style wasn't one of like, I wasn't one of these people who was just like, I don't care, get on with it, do it. I was one of these people who was like, alright, yeah, I get it. And, I'd listen to people and be, feel empathy for them. But ultimately, still, I would be like, and now we need to go get this work done. But I did a lot of that, a lot of listening, a lot of empathy, and a lot of trying to understand. And maybe that helps a little bit. I don't know. There is definitely something there might be a special skill which helps me create the content that I do, and has helped me be reasonably successful with the interviews. But I don't know what it is. I can't put my.
I guess in a way, I guess maybe people are interested because they don't know, like, they like your interviews, but they, like yourself, they're not too sure what makes you, because they know you're different from other people, but it's not really pinpointing what it is? Like, there's that constant interest?
Maybe there's some mystery to me. Perhaps it's because I don't understand myself, so everybody else is like, what the fuck? I don't know. I have no idea, but definitely the interviews have done well, and people have enjoyed them. So
very well.
There's something there. I don't know if it's a secret talent or whatever, but yeah, there's that, and I think, you know, I don't know. I think fishing is. I love fishing.
You know how to reel them in.
Yeah, it's more like I know how to plan to catch them. Like, the specific type of fishing we did in the UK was called carp fishing, and it requires a lot of planning. It's more like laying a trap, you know? And so it's a lot of thinking forwards about what bait am I going to use, they call it the rig, like what's on the end of your line. Rig am I going to use, how am I going to set it up, where am I going to cast it to, you know, what, it's a lot of thought, and then, like I said, just making sure every detail is correct. There's so many small details, like, quite often people fish with blunt hooks, like the hook has to be of a certain sharpness, and hooks can be blunted ever so slightly very easily, and people don't realise that it makes a difference. It's the difference between what normally happens is the fish will take the bait and the hook will pierce their mouth, right? And if it's blunt, might scrape along the mouth and they'll just drop the bait. And, you know, it's a tiny, it seems like a tiny detail, and most people can't be bothered to check their hooks every time they reel it in. And I know this is super detailed, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, the bigger learning is that, you know, if you're keeping an eye on every single detail, it's sort of like all the small things that add up to something big, you know?
Yes, yeah.
If you get all the small things right, then the big things will be fine, you know? And I think that's true of a lot of endeavours, as it were.
Yeah. I know that we've gone on a lot about you and your personal life, which is great. I will just bring it back a little bit to the game, or games, Street Fighter V, Dragon Ball Z. I'd like to know what your opinions are.
In what respects? Like, in terms of quality? In terms of, like, what I enjoy?
Just in terms of if you enjoy it, if you have any problems or issues with it.
No, so my thing is I would love to find more time to play. Because I think I spend a lot of time thinking about games and thinking about players, and then I spend a lot of time editing, and you know, that's why when I was at Evo I was like, you know, I need to step back a bit because I'm starting to lose my connection. I'm not playing the game. So I put out a video actually fairly recently. I hadn't really touched Street Fighter for about 6 months, but the truth is I hadn't really touched any fighting game for about 6 months, you know. And I really enjoy fighting games, and I really need the competition in my life, because that I think everyone, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I think it's sort of a bit of how we tick. Like, we sort of need a bit of some competition in our life somehow to keep us motivated. Sometimes we need things to overcome, obstacles or what have you, and Street Fighter is a very simple sort of version of that, you know, like playing on ranked, you know, or something, or a fighting game playing on ranked is a version of that, you know. I want to rank up. That's going to be my goal, my challenge, and let me figure out how I'm going to do that. But certainly, I'm going to start getting back into the games. But what's been interesting about sort of Street Fighter V having its problems is that it's opened my eyes to, you know, what else is going on. And then Arxis came along and said, "All right, well, Capcom, if you're going to rest on your laurels, we're going to kick some ass, basically." And I think that's great. I want to see competition. You know, I want to see Capcom have competition.
Yeah.
So, I want to see. I thought their latest update on Street Fighter was actually very strong. There are a couple of reasons for that. One is that I felt the characters have great animations. I think they have great graphics. I think they have some great detail. You know, I haven't even tried G yet, but apparently, yeah, Capcom stuff, you know, that people love. They really love that character.
Yeah.
Then of course there's lore-wise, like his connection to Q. And then what blew me away, and this was really a big deal for me, and I'm going to do a video on it at some point, but this was a huge deal. My big problem with Street Fighter V has been like the overall product, the attention to detail, and particularly the user experience has been really, really lacking. You know, when it first came out, it was a bare bones esports platform, basically. It was like,
it was as it was as bare as any fighting game that we'd ever seen before, eh? Like, so minimal.
Right. It was like, this is what we can do. This is as much as we can do for esports, basically. I mean, this is the least we can do, but I'm being literal. Like, this is the least we can do. So, you know, they even apologized about that, right? And it blew my mind that so much of the user experience was all over the place, like kind of went backwards. The user interface as well, you know, it's not, you get into Street Fighter and it's a bit weird, like going into battle settings, like it's just unintuitive, you know. The loading screens are really long, the lag, the netcode, there's so much about it that's backwards, and went backwards from Street Fighter 4 actually. And this is even before you get onto gameplay, and it just makes you feel, you know, because user experience is all about how is this thing going to make me feel, and it just makes you feel like, you know, you've already made a bad purchase. Like when you put it in for the first time, and you're sitting there with the loading screen, I mean, it doesn't take you long to figure out as a Street Fighter player that when you turn Street Fighter on, you need to go and use that time to go do something else until it's loaded up, right?
Yeah, man.
Like on the PS4, you turn your PlayStation on, press a few buttons, and you're like, alright, now let me go and make breakfast. You know, it's like, let me go and do these things. I mean, Sarko, there's footage of Sarko, because, you know, he's a family man, he just won chance to Sarko winning Taiwan without losing a game.
Yeah,
extraordinary. But, you know, busy guy because he has a family and a daughter and all that sort of stuff. So there's footage of him at home, and he has 2 setups which he uses because everything takes too long to load. So he switches between the 2 setups, right? And if that's not a sign of a extremely bad user experience, I don't know what is, right? So, you know, I've talked about this a lot, and I think that that's what bothers me about Street Fighter. To play, I quite enjoy playing as Akuma. For me, he's not terribly rinse and repeat like some of the other characters. Some of the characters are really dry. He's got more options, and there's so much for me personally to learn because, you know, I'm not a pro player or anything like that. So it's all good, and I do enjoy getting to beat people when the netcode is good. That's nice. But I've been looking at other games, you know, like Unist is a game which I think is kind of cool. I've been messing around with that. It's got a good training mode. And Dragon Ball is just, you know, real feel-good game, you know. It's just like, whoa, the world of Dragon Ball, isn't this cool? And it's, you know, so much love and attention has been poured into that game. But I do struggle with Dragon Ball because it's a team-based game, and you need to understand how assists work and all that sort of stuff. So it requires a lot more practice, and especially since there are set phases and that. So, you know, I think one of the games that I want to invest more time in, there's a couple of games that I want to invest more time in. One of them is Tekken, and one of them is Blaze Blue Tag.
Yes, yeah.
Because that looks pretty wild. And a lot of people who play those tag games have been comparing it to, I guess, Marvel 2. You know, without the well-known Marvel characters, but they've been, a lot of people have been describing that game as a lot of fun, and now they have a tour and all that stuff. So, you know, it often makes sense for the games that I'm interested in, you know, to obviously correspond with people that I'm interviewing, you know.
Yeah.
And if there's a tour, then, you know, there's more opportunity for me to find people to interview, and talk about the game. So yeah, I as far as games go, I kind of want to just play them all, but I'm not going to be great at any of them, because I'm playing them all, and partly because, you know, it's not what I'm aiming for. You know, I'm not aiming to go off and win Evo or whatever. But I love, you know, I love that competition. I do love fighting games. But I just wish and hope that Capcom bounces back with and delivers a game to us. And I don't know what it would be, whether it's 356 or whether it's CVS 3 or something like that, where they deliver it to us and it's delivered and it is of beautiful quality. It's filled with love and passion and all that sort of stuff, and the user experience is good. That's what I want to see happen, you know. And that latest update, one of the things which blew my mind was that when you finish a ranked match or a casual match or whatever, there's an option now which allows you to go straight into the training room with the two characters that were just in the match, right? Now, that sounds like a small thing, but there's a couple of things which interest me about it. One of them is that nobody asked for it, right? And it's very unusual, has been very unusual for Capcom to give us anything of any use, full stop, to be honest. But you know, particularly things that people have asked for, right? I mean, they gave us the run back button, I think, and they also gave us the eventually you didn't have to put your thumbs up during tournament to let the other player know that you were ready.
Yeah.
But they added this button, right? So after the match that I've just played, I can go straight into the training room and I can fix or deal or find a way of dealing with something that was giving me a problem during that match. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's really, really good design, you know, user experience design. That's what user experience is. It's like, it's intuitive and it's helpful. And not only that, it makes you a better player, right?
Yeah.
So I'm fighting you, you're Saga, you're giving me problems, you're doing something which I don't understand how to combat it. We finish our match.
Instant run work.
Go straight into the training room and I work on that thing, right? And then I go, alright, got it. And then I go back into, you know, a match, right? And that to me signals that something has happened at Capcom, which has meant that somebody somewhere gives a shit. You know, like, somebody made that happen. And so, I don't know what happened. I know that after Marvel failed, that was a big deal. I know that Dragon Ball FighterZ having more entrants at Evo, selling a bazillion more copies than Street Fighter. I know the failure of Arcade Edition. All of these things add up, right? And at some point, I think Capcom may have woken up. There was definitely, they said something at a quarterly, you know, during a quarterly report along the lines of we need to, you know, make sure quality control, is a priority in our fighting game. So with that last release, update, I feel like not only did they do a good job in terms of quality control with Sagat and G, they added something of value, and that to me blew my mind. And it seems like such a small thing and no one talks about it, but that blew my mind as somebody who is focused in on, you know, what the hell is going on at Capcom and what are they doing and do they care. And I think the answer is yeah, they're still in the game, they do care, And whatever gave him the kick up the arse, might have been Marvel's failure, might have been Arxis, don't know, but it's a good sign. It's a good sign for the future, and hopefully, my hope is that they're designing a, whatever fighting game they're working on at the moment is glorious.
Yeah. That's sweet, dude. Well, we'll just have another break now, so those listening, stay tuned. We are not going anywhere. We will be back in a jiffy.
Hey everyone, this is Justin Wong, and you're watching the Salt Shaker Podcast.
Well guys, this is it, the final part, so I'll finish it up with my man BornFree. So dude, can you tell us, who would you choose as your starter Pokemon? This is a random question. Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle?
Probably... I guess Charmander.
Everyone chooses Charmander, man.
Yeah, because he grows into that fucking amazing creature.
Charizard.
Yeah, the Charizard. I forgot the name. But when I was playing Pokemon Go, because I never played Pokemon when I grew up, but I played Pokemon Go and I kind of got into it. Like crazy. I get a bit obsessive about things, so I got wildly into it. Because it's in Central Park in New York. They had this area where there was like, I don't know, 20 of those pit stops, or whatever the hell they're called. I forgot what they're called.
Pokestops. Yep.
Yeah, Pokestops, but they were always on. Like they were like, so there was like, you could sit there, and I would do like 36-hour session. It was insane. But we'd do a lot of running around. We had like the radars. And I still have 30 plus Snorlaxes on my phone. It's kind of dumb, but I do remember like the start when you started. If you kept walking away from those 3 starters, I think you found Pikachu, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know at the time, but like if you kept walking away from the starter Pokemon, eventually Pikachu showed up and you could start with him. So, but even he is like, I think I'd still prefer the Charmander.
Yeah. Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard. Classic pick.
Yeah.
Who would be your celebrity crush?
Nowadays... Nowadays... Damn, celebrities just aren't... Oh, Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it the Black Widow character? Is it short hair? the eyes, just all around beautiful woman.
Yeah, just all around beautiful woman. I guess she has a bit of a Marilyn Monroe thing, I suppose. Not that I ever really thought about Marilyn Monroe, but... And then I guess she sort of looked a lot like one of my exes, so... You know, it's sort of like just one of those things. And then I remember that she was actually dating somebody who worked in advertising, who, you know, the degrees of separation became so small that, like, in this bizarre part of my brain, I was, oh my god, she's dating somebody who, like, would be working alongside me, or could be working alongside me. That's just weird.
Oh, you're torturing yourself, man.
I mean, nowadays I don't, you know, I'm not sure that I have a celebrity crush, but like, she is definitely, she's definitely out there. And when I was younger, like proper crushing, like when you sort of have, when you like watch something and you're like, hello, I feel something. I had this thing for Lilo in what the fuck is that Bruce Willis movie? The sci-fi with Luc Besson directed.
Yes. Oh my god, what was that name? Yeah, I know which one. Yeah.
Fifth Element. I apologize. It's getting late, so my brain is going. But Fifth Element with Bruce Willis and
Mila Jovovich, The Fifth Element. Yes.
Yeah, Mila Jovovich. But it wasn't Mila Jovovich. Her name right now. It wasn't her so much as it was the character Lilo. For some reason, I had like a thing. Like I remember going to see it in the movies, and I was like, I need to come back and watch this movie like 5 times. So that was like a proper crush. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Scarlett. I think Scarlett is my girl.
Okay. All right, we'll lock that in. Sweet as. Well, you're a UK boy. Just because you've got that, would you... It sounds really good if you were knighted in some way. You know, like the process of being knighted. Sir BornFree. Feels like it would stick.
Yeah, I mean, not I should be knighted, but Sir BornFree. That's actually pretty funny. Because they started calling me Mr. BornFree when I was hosting at ESL with Sajam and David and Ultra David and James Chen and Tasty Steve. Every time they went over to me, they would call me Mr. BornFree as opposed to BornFree. And at some point, I sort of was considering whether I should just change my name, my gamertag or whatever you want to call it, my pseudonym to Mr. BornFree. But Sir BornFree.
Because you're English, it kind of like it fits.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. But I feel the thing is, like, because I am English and because there are people who are knighted, it just feels like weird to call yourself Sir. Like, even in a jokey way, it feels weird because, like, there are genuine people like being
that
knighted.
are knighted. I guess the way that they judge how you get knighted as well. Oh, I made platinum rank. Ooh, Sir BornFree.
If I ever make Grandmaster, then I should definitely get knighted.
Do you know anyone that has been knighted or given like special awards of that kind?
Not really. I don't think so. Okay. Well, my granddad. So the story goes that my granddad was, on my dad's side, was a civil engineer, and a very good one. And he worked for a company called Sir William Halcrow and Partners or whatever. And everybody who made it to partner usually, this is my understanding, I'm not like an expert on this, but everybody who made it to partner usually got knighted. The story goes that he might have been knighted, but he had very strong political views because he actually grew up in Northern Ireland. But you know, this was told to me a long time ago, kid. So I don't totally know. But that's about as close as it gets. Like, I don't know anyone who's been given any special titles.
So it is rumoured that you could be from an ancient royal line.
Yeah, I don't know about a royal, but yeah, sure. It's definitely rumoured that my granddad potentially could have been knighted if it wasn't for his political views. So it actually kind of sounds like it's kind of I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like I'm one of those people who will say stuff these days and not really care too much about the consequences. You know, not nasty stuff, but you know, there's lots of there are ways to navigate the fighting game community, and particularly when it comes to like, I want to be a host or I want to make money being a commentator or whatever, right? Various ways, you know, but you know, there are definitely, or I want to work for Capcom, you know, or I want to be sponsored. And for sure, you know, as things get more esportsy, it'll become more business-like, and you know, if you're sponsored by somebody, or you're not going to talk shit about them. But I do feel like sometimes there are some things where I will just speak out because I'm just like, well, I don't know, I can't put up. You know, like, Capcom is a really interesting one because for years growing up, I felt like, wouldn't it be cool if I worked for Capcom? What a cool company that is, you know. Grew up absolute Capcom fanboy, all the games when I was a kid, they're amazing. Like, Capcom logo when it came up, you know, on the SNES, like, I just thought it was the most amazing thing, the sound and the games and that sort of stuff. And then when I got here and had more of a voice, there was a lot of people who said, you should go to Capcom, you should go work for Capcom, you should be the community manager or whatever, right? And there's even been times when they've had jobs available where it's been hinted at from people who work in the industry that I should go apply for this job or whatever. But it hasn't stopped me from saying the things that I need to say about Street Fighter.
You've kept your integrity.
You know? I mean, I guess, like, you know, I also know what it's like to work for companies. I know how it works, you know. When we can't all act like it's not important to have a job, to get paid, to have responsibilities, you know. But there is something about Street Fighter that makes me want to speak out. There's something about my history with that game that makes me want to say, in a respectful way, hey, this game, this version of the game isn't up to scratch, you know, particularly, you know, the way it was delivered when it was first delivered, you know, so bare bones, so lacking in love and passion and attention to detail, user experience and intuitiveness and, you know, all that stuff that goes with it. I've made plenty of videos about it. And I think that if I had sort of felt like, oh, you know, I want to have a job at Capcom, I wouldn't have said any of those things, you know?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a part of me that prioritized, prioritized what I felt was right over, you know, potentially trying to move into a job with those guys. But, you know, maybe I've never a job at, but it's just something that people were always talking to me about. Always, you know, occasionally people who worked within Capcom sort of suggested certain things, you know, in the past. But I just feel what's more important, Capcom gets the message and understands what they need to do to get back on top, you know, in fighting games. I really and that's, to me, is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And
But I don't think I'm gonna get knighted for that.
and finally, man, who is your fighting game waifu?
Be Cammy for sure, because before Street Fighter 4, I guess, or before, there weren't many female characters. Oh, Street Fighter 3, back in the Street Fighter 2 days, there was Chun-Li and then there was Cammy. And Cammy is English or British, I'm not really sure. I think she's English.
Yeah.
But it used to be Cammy, game waifu. But just for a second to see if there's anyone else now. It was Android 18 for a little bit. And then there's I'm trying to think on the. Oh, I know who it is. Sorry, I knew there was a reason I was stalling.
That's so good.
It's Kareen or Karen.
You just like all the blondies, don't you?
Well, kind of. It's weird because when I was growing up, I was desperately in love with a lot of brunettes. Brown eyes, brown hair. First girl I ever loved, brown eyes, brown hair. And I just thought brunettes were amazing. And then weirdly, throughout life I would end up with blondes. I'd end up dating blondes, even though I was like, damn, I really want to go out with a brunette.
It's like the universe is trying to steer you in the right direction,
I guess. And then Kareen is, one of my ex-girlfriends was so kind of a bit haughty-taughty, like a bit posh and a bit rude.
Yeah.
People. She's fine with me. She was super nice with me until we broke up. She turned into a total bitch. But when we were going out, she was kind of sweet. But Kareen or Karen, or however you want to pronounce it, she is. I just love all of her quotes. I think she's such a. She's so kind of like above everyone else. She's so posh. A bit. She's just got that attitude. I kind of think is cool.
It's like the way she carries herself.
Yeah, it's just kind of like I don't know. She's like the spoiled rich kid, but and she's the way she talks to people, she talks down, they all do. That's what they do as fighters. A lot of their talking, they sort of talk down to each other. But she's especially good at it. I feel that she's good at talking down to people in a way that I just really. And she has servants and stuff,
People to clean up after her, yeah.
Yeah, and if you were to date her or marry her, you'd be set for life.
BornFree, thank you so much for your time and for your tales. Is there anything you want to say? Any final words or shoutouts? Thank you to you, really. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun. The questions have been really interesting, I think. And I wish you all the best for the future. And I wanted to say thanks to anyone listening to this podcast. I guess particularly who watches my stuff or supports me. That means a lot to me. And if you ever get a chance, you see me at a convention, come say hello. Because I always like to thank people in person. Because it's what it boils down to really, is people support your work and tell you, and especially if they tell you they support your work, it means you keep going. It means you keep wanting to do better work. Because ultimately, what's the point of doing it if you're not contributing something? If people aren't enjoying it, it's good to hear when people enjoy it. And then the other thing is, if you get a chance, please do follow me on my stream, because that's my new thing, streaming, and I promise it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's at BornFree Twitch. It's a super creative name. BornFree Twitch.
Yeah. Super creative name, came up with myself, free Twitch. So one of the things I found out when every time I joined a new social media, app or whatever, right, I would just go, all right, well, let's just call this BornFree Tweets or BornFree whatever, And I found out that some of the apps won't allow you to include their name in your handle. Like, it's an impossibility. Like, they won't let you. And I don't know if it's because people can write things like PlayStation sucks or whatever. But like, I found that because I'm pretty sure I think you can write BornFree Twitter. In fact, I might use that somewhere. BornFree Tweets sounds better. BornFree Twitch, they allow you to say Twitch. But I'm pretty sure I had BornFree PlayStation at some stage, but I wouldn't let PlayStation in the name. It's very interesting, like how some of them make sure that you can't possibly denigrate their name by having it in your game tag.
Yeah.
But anyway, if people want to follow me anywhere, it's either BornFree Tweets or I'm on YouTube as well.
Yeah, definitely. Please follow. Please look this man up on Twitch. BornFree, thank you again so much, dude. To everyone who's listened, take care, and we'll see you another time.